Welcome to our last episode in Season 1 of Everyday Courage. And today, we kind of have a special guest. First of all, I'm David Millstone, and...
I'm Stephan Dweck.
Great. And we are here today with our producer, Michelle Simone Miller, who is... Yes, indeed. Take a bow.
Hey, Miss Miller. Mrs. Miller, excuse me.
Mrs. Miller, that's right. And she's also the host of her own podcast, Mentors on the Mic, which I believe is in the top 1% of all podcasts in popularity, which is freaking amazing. We're not, but but she is.
This payola podcast, right?
There you go. Hey, Michelle, introduce thyself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. It's nice to be on. It's nice to talk to you guys on camera. And yes, I am the producer of Everyday Courage, or one of them, really. Technically, I would say you are too.
Well, fantastic. Thank you for coming on this, on this project. You've had so much to do with getting it up and out there, and a lot of our better work is due to you.
All due to you.
Yeah?
Thank you. That's very, very sweet.
But you've been in the background this whole time. You've heard us, chip away at this topic. And just by way of, well, first of all, by way of introduction, why don't you tell us about Mentors on the Mic a little bit, and then we'll get around.
Oh, that's nice.
Okay, that's nice. Mentors on the Mic is a podcast I started in 2020, and I interview different people in the entertainment industries about their careers, how they started, how they got to where they are today. So everyone from showrunners of television shows to network executives to writers, directors, actors, that sort of thing.
And this is kind of a great segue, actually. So in terms of your conception of the show, and how it turned out, how did it change Mentors on the Mic for you or for your listeners?
Yeah. I mean, I never really thought about it long term, except for that I was simultaneously creating these panels for my alma mater. And I was creating these panels of entertainment, people, figuring out that I like to hear about how they started and how they moved up. I was naturally curious about people. And I think that when I started, I just wanted to talk to these people for longer. Like, I felt like here I am. I have the option of the privilege of being able to speak to these incredible people. At the time, it was like a producer. It was a unit production manager. It was a network executive, and someone at NBC was a research analyst at NBC. And I was like, these are such cool jobs. And I just wanted to hear about how they did it. And then it evolved over time, especially when I started to realize that not only were they mentors for me, but they were mentors for other people. And I started connecting the mentors with people in the audience and developing a community that way, and trying to, or sometimes I didn't even do anything. Sometimes people would write to the mentors that were on my podcast. I had one guy, Jay Francis, who's the VP at Disney Animation, and one of my listeners reached out to him afterwards, and now he's their personal mentor and sets up meetings with them at Disney and is encouraging them, and so things like that happen, and so that I didn't realize would happen. So that was a cool byproduct. And then also I've gotten acting parts through my podcast. My acting coach, we talked about Bob Krakauer, David. I couldn't get into his class, and then I interviewed him on my podcast, and now I'm in his class.
Great. All right, everybody. That's how you get into the Krakauer gang.
Quid
You
pro
got to start a podcast.
Who are you, Eric Adams? No, I'm just joking.
So how far into it did you actually end up articulating for yourself a mission? And I've heard you articulate the mission.
I think really early on, it was really about connecting with people on their first job, how they started and how they moved up to where they are today. That's been there from the beginning. It's also evolved so that I can provide resources, not just for my mentors, but things that I've learned over time. So sometimes I'll either bring people on to talk about a particular topic that I think would help my audience, or I talk about something that I think would help my audience. And in that way, it's evolved. But the original mission is the same. I still quote the same mission that I started with in the beginning.
But what I'm trying to get at is actually your audience. So what I'm hearing is you started with this personal interest, but then you sharpened along the way your idea of who would actually listen to you and who would really get something from you. So, I've heard you describe your base as being people who are up and coming in the industry, which is different than, say, someone like me.
Yeah, well, so the way I describe it usually is people who are just starting in the industry or have been doing it for a few years. So usually it's that like middle ground, and I think a lot of that came from the fact that I had been doing it for, I think at the time, like a decade, and there was still stuff I was learning, but there was also a lot of, I think it was just what I felt comfortable talking to, like who I felt comfortable talking to people who were just starting, and for people who had been doing it for a few years, and then I realized how important that was in talking to my guests, because then it's like that audience needs to be addressed in a certain way. So if we're going to be talking about acronyms, or we're going to talk about things in the industry, and if you're starting out, then I have to define those things for you, as opposed to if I was speaking to an audience of people who have been doing it for 20 years, 15 years, whatever it is, they won't need the explanations. They're in on the lingo, the jargon. So I started off with this idea of, okay, I'm going to be explaining the things to the people who are in the audience who don't get it.
You know what I like about that is that there's no roadmap to this. When you're in high school, it's structured. When you're in college, it's structured. Or professional schools, medical schools, law schools. But our business, there's really no roadmap. How do you get in? I mean, you go to acting class, you go to auditions, you want to be a deal maker. I don't know. You have to kind of find your way.
It's so true. It's probably true in every industry, but I look out there and I see fresh meat come into the industry all the time out of BFA and MFA programs, and with varying degrees of preparation for actually being free agents in a really tough freelance environment. You have to learn how to not just make your way from little job to little job. And when you start as a stage actor, right, you're getting paid peanuts. You're barely getting by, and you don't barely have time to attend to career growth because you're doing all that work to be on stage. So how does one move forward from that? There's only so much you can teach somebody, right?
Yeah.
About how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not linear, which is, I thought, the most frustrating part. I mean, I graduated college and I was like, I'm ready to be an actor. I'm ready to come back to New York. I'm ready to do whatever I need to do. I had a resume. I made a reel. I was like, I'm ready. Now what? And I realized I didn't know anything about the business. I didn't know what casting directors were. I didn't know how to meet the casting directors. I didn't know that the casting directors are really the only way to get the major auditions. And the only way to get those major auditions is to have an agent or manager. You can't get it on your own. So you start to pick up on these things. Then you go, okay, well, then how do I meet an agent or manager? And then there are ways to meet them in workshops. There are ways to meet them otherwise. But all of a sudden, you start to develop this, okay, if I get an agent or manager, then I'm going to get the auditions that I want. And so then you get that agent or manager. It takes a while, and you finally do it.
Takes a while.
And then you maybe don't get those big auditions right away. It's not like everything just magically changes. And so finally you build it up and you start getting the auditions. But people don't tell you the chances of you getting that audition is slim to none, because out of the thousands of people who want that audition and who are submitted for that audition, let's say 30 to 50 people get the audition. Now it's more 50 because they do self-tapes. But at the time, I used to ask casting directors, it'd be like 30 people a role sometimes.
Wow.
So then
That's those are good odds.
Those are good odds. So then it's like
30 people a roll are good odds.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's better than they
awesome.
bring only 6 or 7 or 10, And so then you have, out of 30 people, let's say they choose their top 4 maybe to send to their producers, and they go, these are 4 really great standout ones. So you want to be in those top 4. The chances of booking it are so low, and you did nothing wrong, right? Like they'll say, we liked all 4 people. We liked even 12 people, but we only needed to pick 4, and then we only need to pick 1 person. So out of the 3,500 people that they saw headshots for this
Easily.
one role,
only
1 people get it. So 1 person gets it. So you could be auditioning over and over again, book 1 small thing, and then be like, how is this what I've foregone all this other stuff? I didn't get a full-time job like I could have. I didn't go to law school or business school like I could have. I did this, and my chances are this low. Like, it's so much. There's nothing linear about it. The odds are super low. You hope to get lucky all the time. And sometimes, by the way, Stephan, I mean, you might not know this, or you may know this, you may have heard of this, but like sometimes the casting directors will give the stupidest reasons as to why a client doesn't choose an actor. And it can come down to they look like my ex-wife.
Yeah, Bob tells that story.
Yeah, they look like my ex-wife. They're already blonde, and we already have a blonde in the
Too
scene.
tall,
Yeah.
They're too tall. They're
Yeah.
too short. So you can't do anything about
You're too
that.
white, you're too black.
So you're too white.
Yeah.
You're too black. You're not. Yeah,
You're
you're
too
not.
Jewish.
You're too
Oh,
Jewish.
and by the way, the coded language, it's less frequent than it used to be, but like I've heard, yeah, this person is, not urban enough, or they're too urban. That
That's
means
a thing.
black.
That's
Urban
a thing.
means black.
Or can they be more urban?
Or can
Why
be more
aren't they?
urban.
Can we have them be?
But what they mean by more urban
Can we have them
is, "Hey, man, I'm
sassier?"
a pimp, it's really fucking shitty.
They'll tell my black girlfriends, "Can you be sassier?
Well, yeah.
Can you be angrier? Can you be sassier?" And it's like, well, there's a very specific idea of what they think they want to
Very
be, and that's
specific.
not how everyone is.
I went to an audition and somebody told me I was too urban, and I said, I'll be urban if I can rob you after the audition. I'm just no, I'm not an actor, so.
No, well, that was awesome, though.
That's so good.
I mean, but it's such bullshit. Look, this is my opinion. For full transparency, I've been on the other side of that table
Sure.
where I've had to actually pick actors, and you know that, Millstone.
And
Yeah, I was
someone
there with
looked
you.
like an ex, and you were like, not that person.
No, well, yeah, but that's funny. No, I think look, this is my opinion. Actually, I've been in this business since 1987, and I've been successful to a degree. The only way to make it as an actor, and I'm not an actor, I've produced film and television, you know that. You got to create your own vehicle. If you're sitting by the phone, maybe 20, 30 years ago, when the gatekeepers had more control, but our process of reaching an audience has been democratized through technology. In a lot of ways, you cannot wait for them. You can still go through the motions, but you got to create your own vehicles that you want to be in and you can do. The technology has dramatically decreased the cost in some ways to get stuff out there, even if they're shorts. You have to do your own thing because Hollywood is still based on a lot of stereotypical boxes that a lot of people fit in. And it's who you know, and no one's hot. Neither you're hot or you're not happy in Hollywood. So, I mean, you got to create your own vehicle.
Bend back a little bit, to kind of pick up on that and bend back a little. I think the point in a performer's career in which things start to happen maybe when they move from not knowing what they don't know to knowing what they don't know, and learning and realizing there are different ways I can do this. There are people I now know that I'm not meeting. Does that make sense? So, Michelle, one question I have about your audience, do you think that your audience has taught you anything? Or what have you learned from your audience?
What have I learned from my audience?
Someone bring Stephan an espresso.
A couple different things. I think what comes to me top of mind is, it's interesting what does well, like what episodes do well. And sometimes I'll think like, I would say some of my best episodes are still like the creator of Friends. That's one of my best episodes. Casting directors do really well. People really want to hear from the casting director, sometimes more than they want to hear from the directors and producers making the final decision. People still feel like the casting directors are these gatekeepers and they're the ones that are going to decide everything. But I almost want to hear from the people above them who are making the final decision. So I always find that to be interesting. I don't know. My audience is great. Like whenever I do get to interact with them, I was at Tribeca a few weeks ago, 2 months ago. These two people saw me on social media and came to where I was. Normally I'm very good, or everyone should be very good about not showcasing where they are at a certain time. But for whatever reason, I forgot. And I told my social media, I'm going to be at the Roxy Hotel soon. And so they showed up and they were like, we just wanted to say hi and get a picture with you. And I was like,
oh, nice.
That's so cool.
Very cool.
And then they're doing the same things. They're creating their own work and they're like,
there you go.
I think they're creating, it's very cool. They're creating like almost like a social media magazine. So like, everyone is doing really cool things. So I learn from people a lot, like what they're doing, how they're creating, things that I'm good at but could be better at. Like I've created my own podcast, but I haven't
There
really
you go.
created my own film yet. Like I've produced films that I've been in, but I haven't made my own. So I'll learn from my audience and be like, okay, I need to create more.
But I think 10 years ago, we can't be so linear. It's just not even about film anymore. You can do short.
Yeah, no, I want to create a short. That's my next thing.
But you can also do stuff that shows up on social media. I mean, a minute, 2 minute, 3 minute interplay where you are acting.
There's a lot of that. Yeah.
And really break out. YouTube, I read the dailies like I sent it to you guys. Is as big or bigger than a lot of networks and streaming services. And that's the wave of the future. So, I mean, I just don't want your audience and this audience to get caught up that film is the only way to get out there.
Of course.
Not at all. Even my podcast, part of the one thing that came from my podcast, or one thing I was hoping would come from it, and it has, is I've developed a very, very strong network of people in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like every guest I'm super in touch with. Sometimes I'm just in touch with their teams. Right. But there are a lot of people, like I'm texting with people in the industry that are doing incredible things right now, and we're on a texting basis. So do I want to create something and then have them look at it, help me, showcase it, see if they can help me take it to another level? Like I've created this network of people based on this podcast that I've created. So you don't really know what comes sometimes from creating any form of content.
So one thing I see I hear a lot of, we all hear a lot of from people who are just trying to get started and are very frustrated. They'll say, God, it's not what you do, it's who you know. It's like who you know. Yeah, but the people fail to realize is that knowing people is itself a real accomplishment. That's something that takes years of work and doing work, getting out there, networking, yada, yada, yada. I don't want to call it networking because that makes it sound really easy and superficial. But networking is different from eventually just having a network such as you have, Michelle. So I think that's where we begin to really feel like we have genuine opportunity, is when we have a network of colleagues and potential collaborators.
Well, I know a lot of agents, and they're slightly above lawyers on the scumbag scale.
Well, mine's different. I like mine a lot. I have to say that. Yeah.
I can say that because I'm a lawyer and I got to deal with them every day. But I mean, look, I like agents, and the agents that I deal with are actually nice guys.
And I'm sure they like you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm bringing them. They like me.
You're bringing them cheddar.
They like exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, now that I help make the deals, and I'm not too mahoney, but I deal with agents sometimes, several times a day, different agents. Most of them are in L.A., some of them are in New York, and there's theatrical agents, and there's live performance agents, and then there's commercial agents, and it's just a lot. But some agents will only take you if you have some celebrity because they want to cut the deal quicker. And some agents will tell you one thing, you'll be in an office, ready to go into a deal, and then they'll say, stay out here for a moment. They'll go in and cut the deal and cut you out. Say, I can get them, just give me this amount of money. You have to be, I've seen so much.
Do you ever have agents that try to uplift some of the other people on their roster by using the bigger names?
All the time.
Yeah.
Oh, God. And also the other way around. I think I sometimes...
packaging.
Right.
Yeah, well, which is not really... It's not... It's kind of
if
verboten now.
If you take X, you better take Y.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's also another thing that happens is that when you're like a nobody, like me, I'll get pinned for something. And then the role will eventually go to a name actor or go to a star. And I'm clearly there in that final. They want the name. They've always wanted the name. That's the person you're always going for. But I'm there just to fill out because
they might not get the name.
Submission.
And if they don't get the name, they need you.
Yeah,
right? So it's like,
that's true.
It all has to happen simultaneously sometimes.
Notwithstanding my KGB shirt, this is about capitalism, right? I mean, can you sell to distributors? Can you sell overseas? Even if the name is less talented.
Of course. Yeah.
I need, and you're a producer, Millstone.
Yeah,
I need funding. Well, I've got, Sidney Poitier, God rest his soul, attached to the movie when he was alive. Oh, really got Sidney? Here's the money. And you can
And then if you go past the money, it's also about publicity. So like
Right.
I, for example, just covered for my podcast, the Tribeca Festival, right? And, you know, I go through all of the films. And of course, I'm looking at a lot of different things. But one thing I'm looking at are the name talent. Because if I get those name talent on my podcast, it's going to have a bigger,
It's going to elevate it.
Now, granted, I always make sure I highlight and elevate people who, like, you know, films that aren't as big as well. But am I looking for the people? Am I trying to get on the carpets with the bigger actors? Am I trying to get a bigger director to be on my podcast that was on Tribeca? Yeah. So all that matters.
So let's.
But it matters in an illusory way. What do I mean by that? It really does, because the power of celebrity is scary. They could be, on an objective scale, they could be way less talented than somebody that you know, right? But if you get this person, it's going to elevate my podcast. People are going to listen. It can bring funding, and it'll increase your stature and increase your own celebrity. So,
Yeah.
it's,
And now it's, by the way, going past celebrity and onto social media following,
right.
which is
So
not a good indication.
So let's bend back a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
Let's get a little, just a little closer to our theme of the podcast.
Cooking?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So clearly, any listener listening to this, in the business or not, is going to realize it takes a lot of courage to step into this maelstrom, right? That one of my partners calls simply a circus. It's just a circus. But I'm thinking about one aspect of the courage it takes to be in this business is retaining one's integrity in the business, actually staying true to oneself and to one's own value. Holding on to one's integrity can be harder to do than it sounds when someone's trying to get a toehold, because you're kind of desperate. You want the job.
Mm-hmm.
We want to succeed, and we can tell ourselves that it's a dog eat dog, cutthroat business, and I got to do what I got to do. But the staying power, I think, to really being able to get someplace and stay there, really asks us to be fully human. And to be fully human, to show up in the room as full human beings. And to be full human beings, we need to show up with all of our values, including our integrity and our, we want to include all our potential collaborators and employers in our circle of care. Your audience must voice a lot of trepidation to you. How do you hear people handling their fear?
Oh, good question.
I have a question. See that?
Well, I got to tell you, I don't have as much communication with my audience as one might think. I mean, you get like comments here and there, you get direct messages here and there, but as you guys know, you make a podcast, you record something, and then you put it out, and you hope people listen, and then sometimes people listen, and then they just don't write you. So there's only so much I know about my audience. That being said, the question was about fear, about how they handle fear. I don't know. I think anyone who's creative in this world, anyone who's leading some sort of creative life, has courage.
So
And I think we talked about that with some of our guests in
Yeah.
particular who are more creative. I mean, was there anything you noticed, David, about the more creative people who were on our podcast who have more creative jobs, how they sort of handled courage, how they saw it?
Yeah. Especially the two artists I'm thinking of off the top of my head are my buddy Park Borchert, who's dealing with the terrible back issues, and my buddy Joachim Moore, who's the artistic director and actor out in California. What I noticed in their interviews was that, contrary to the expectation of maybe many non-creative people, it doesn't really take courage for them to be creative. It just kind of pours out of them because they need to do it. It's part of them. One thing that non-creative people, I think, don't understand, people who think of themselves as non-creative. Everyone's creative. People who think of themselves as non-creative, they look at us, those of us who do think of ourselves as creative, and they're like, how do you do that? Why do you do it? And what they don't get is that it's as fundamental to us as food, sleep, work, sex, creativity. Those are the fundamental needs that we all need, and we can't really get by without it. We're lopping a limb off if we fail to be creative.
So, go on. You start, Stephan.
No, I mean, what's the percentage of actors who work in working actors?
Less than 1%.
So you're entering a field with less than one, where there's way more supply than demand, right? Takes a hell of a lot of courage to come into this world.
Or
Even with the
foolhardiness, either one.
I mean,
Delusion.
you get a college degree or a graduate degree. All your friends live in probably much better housing. They're going out to meals or hanging out with their friends.
Obvious.
You see them moving in their career, and you're going on auditions with 3,500 people, coming home and eating ramen and peanut butter. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
That takes a whole lot of courage. And then when you get the break, because we're in a business of rejection. We have to realize that. I mean, on all levels, and not just actors, but producers, deal makers. I got to make 5 deals to get one. You finally, somebody says yes, and it's a role that is kind of demeaning. What are you going to do?
I mean, that's the thing. There are a lot of, going back to this idea of courage, and especially with actors and sticking true with your values, what you were saying before, David, a lot of times we're creating that for ourselves. I don't think everyone has an innate set of values. I think it's constantly evolving. That's my own personal thing. There's certain things that maybe are fixed, but for the most part, you don't know what you don't know. You don't realize you have a value until you're questioned about it, right? And sometimes we stick with that value, that initial thing. So for instance, I think early on I decided I didn't want to be naked or nude in a role unless it was much bigger. And part of that was A, I wanted to be paid well for it. And B, I wanted there to be an element of protection and safety that I didn't think would come if I had like a very small prostitute role on Law and Order.
Absolutely.
So that was my own personal thing. Nothing wrong with anyone else making a different choice. There always has to be nude prostitutes somewhere in a movie or show. I just didn't want to be that, at least in that early. That was my own thing. Now, was it hard when sometimes I'd get those auditions?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if I decided that I wanted to change that and decided I wanted to audition for that anyway, because I maybe had not been auditioning for a while or hadn't booked anything in a while, I'm allowed to change my mind in evolving my values. Now, if later I do it and I go, I feel shitty, I feel bad about myself, then I need to go, okay, I need to stick with that early value, and that's important to me. What are you going to say, Stephan?
There are auditions where they say nudity. I mean, I don't really...
100%. I will copy and paste it to you next time.
Wow.
And you know what? They don't pay well.
Must show breasts.
It's
must
amazing.
Show booty.
Yeah. They'll say must show nudity, must be okay with I don't remember how exactly. Sex scenes, essentially. Must be okay with fondling and this and that. Like they'll tell you exactly what it is. And then they won't pay well for it.
It's funny. In the contracts, actually, I've helped draft some interesting clauses that we call them the nudity clauses, where no one can be in the room.
Right.
That's important. That's actually really important.
And you have to have an intimacy coach or...
But you can only do that with people that can demand that.
Well...
So that's one of the reasons why I was like, I'll do nudity for a role if it was down the line when I have a lawyer like Stephan going, okay, we need to have this, we need to have that, we need to have this. I can't negotiate that when I'm going in for a co-star.
Just so the audience knows, right? I haven't lawyered in a while. I'm more of a talent manager, but I work with so many lawyers, and I will edit the lawyers that I work with. But I'm fortunate to work with people where if that comes up, I can just cross it out and say "fuck you."
All right, let's make a little bit of a turn here. Make a little bit of bend here. So, Michelle, I want to ask you. You've been listening to season 1.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, yes.
A couple times.
Yeah, a couple more.
I have to edit them, and then I make the videos. So, a couple times.
Yeah, you know the subject well. So, what have been your takeaways or thoughts or likes or dislikes from the show?
Definitely so many dislikes. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, so many things. It's for me, more and more. There's something really beautiful. When we first talked about doing this podcast together, there's something amazing about talking with everyday people about how they experience courage in their lives and what they see. And interestingly, I'm pretty sure everyone had a different definition of what courage was to them. And I found that to be really interesting. And I feel like I always had my own definition. And even after 9 episodes and 9 interviews, I feel like I have my same definition, which is, to me, and I couldn't find who said this, I told David this. I was like, I tried Googling who said this first. I'm sure it's an amalgamation of a bunch of different quotes, but it's courage isn't the absence of fear. It's having the fear, but doing it anyway.
Yes, absolutely.
And so for me, that's how I see courage. It's you're afraid, you can still be afraid, and you just do it. And so when we go back to the creative people who are just doing it, right? Because for them, it's more important for them to be creative and live a creative life than it is to do anything else. Some people might look at that as courage, and it is, but you're just doing it anyway, even if you have all that fear from eating ramen or not being where your friends are or your other, the other people you graduated with. All of a sudden you're like, I have to do this anyway. That's what I think courage is.
Now I'm touching on an area that we did not get into this season that I would have loved to, and if we do a second season, we will. Where do you think there are times when courage actually is a bad thing? Something it's not helpful or good?
That's a really good question.
I mean, well, there's definitely courage that's mishandled, right? If you think of, not to be too evil, but or going to something evil, but if you think of a suicide bomber, they have a lot of courage. Do I think that courage is misplaced? Yes, right? There are many people in the world that are able to overcome their fear and have courage in doing something, and I kind of wish they didn't have that. So yeah, when I think of that, yes. Is that what you're thinking? What are you guys thinking of when you think of courage that's mishandled or courage that you wish that that person didn't have?
Well, that's a good question, David, because the word courage has such a positive connotation to it that you flipped it in some ways, because fear is healthy in some ways also. Fear of stepping over a cliff, right? Or putting your hand on a stove. But I think in some way there's an art to this. You have to know when to, this is hard. It's like, I don't know that it's intentional, because sometimes you don't know when to be courageous and when not to be.
I think this is part of moral education, right? And,
So
we live in a liberal society, which means we live in a society that valorizes individuality. We are taught to seek our own gain and to be courageous for our own goals. But it feels like maybe for a little while now, we're not getting as much education, much training about being courageous on behalf of the community.
Do you mean courage like standing up for what you think is right?
I think there's an old black saying. It's not black, but you got to know. I wouldn't say it's just an old saying. There's no racial connotation to it. You got to know when you're pushing water up a hill. You could be like Sisyphus and keep pushing a rock, right? But sometimes you got to realize it just ain't working. And you could be courageous and stay in a bad situation, and it just gets worse.
And that's when courage actually flips to its opposite in a way. Anyway, it ends up being an idea fixie. And how you say that? It's a fixed idea that we latch on to.
What's the opposite of courage then? What is it? I don't know.
Well, maybe paralysis sometimes. Just not in Dante's Inferno. One of the worst rungs of hell was reserved for those who don't take a position, who don't do anything, who don't take a side.
Indecision, cowardice.
That
Switzerland.
Paralysis, I think, is probably the opposite. So we handled this year. In this season, we ended up kind of lightly testing the idea that talking about small acts of courage we don't recognize as such in our daily lives might teach us something about bigger acts of courage that we might want to take out in the world. But in order to do that, I ended up just kind of winging it, right? We ended up inviting guests on who I knew from different areas of life, just to see, just to kind of all right, let's see what you all say about it. What we didn't do is a more academic approach, kind of a taxonomy of courage, where we asked, what are different kinds of courage? Spiritual courage, physical, military, ethical.
Well, for context, I don't know, Stephan, if you know this, but David went into this season hoping that every episode was going to be about a different kind of courage. So like a spiritual courage versus a military type courage, related to different aspects of courage. And we didn't really do that. That being said, what we did,
This came out better.
Go on.
I think that you can be too pigeonholed and we have to stick to this particular lane. I mean, it would have been interesting, but I think you covered a lot of that.
I do too.
It's there. You get the different aspects of courage. It may not be as pointed as having an episode on each form of courage, but it's there. And I think for me, it was great to see people express courage, and really people out there doing their own thing in their own way, in a courageous way. I was very impressed that people are out there making stuff happen. And it was inspiring to me. You got to make some more stuff happen too. So it was inspiring to me to hear people in their own lane making a difference. And I thought it was very successful in that sense. Way more than, I guess, the initial concept that you had, Millstone, when we were.
And I'll add that, you were very intentional, David, about who you were going to bring on. I don't feel like it was a free-for-all of like, I'm going to just, do a mass email to all of my friends and say, who wants to be on it? You were intentional
I would
as
have
to
done
like,
that.
Exactly. There you go.
And then I would have had David Duke. But
Yeah, I really wanted to hear from people from maybe not in an obvious way, but from different parts of life, different aspects of life. So we had a healthcare advocate, we had a GOP politician, we had a couple of performers, a sports announcer, a
former surgeon,
fire chief, a fire captain,
yeah,
right?
Sure.
Right. These are, and they live in different parts of the country, rural Oregon, as well as from, the East Coast, and California. We got a little bit of variety there.
Yeah, I mean,
sure.
I could have never gotten that kind of variety. You did your thing, David, because you've lived a lot of places. You've experienced the United States through different lenses. So, I mean.
Yeah, and one of the things we did, even if like nobody listened to us, I understand we have a certain number of downloads. So someone's listening to us, but we don't know who it is. But even if nobody we don't
I'm
know,
not one of them.
even if no one we do not know is listening to this thing, I count this project as a success because we've clearly done something for a few of our guests. It's been a mitzvah to be able to help a couple of our guests think about themselves a little differently, perhaps. I'm thinking now of Jacqueline Carlo, who was like, I'm not courageous. I'm just a mom. I'm just doing my thing. And I'm not sure that by the end of the interview, she was thinking, I'm a courageous person. But by the time she heard from her friends who had listened to her interview, she began to get it. And and it was really, really touching to hear that.
That's what I wanted to ask you. So what did our guests think of? I mean, it's out there. What are people saying?
Don't know yet. Jackie Carlo really was moved, I think. When she was on the air with us, she let us know that having listened to prior episodes, she actually got a little helping hand in dealing with a couple of things in her life. That was really cool to hear.
Monica, your sister, wrote us this beautiful email with like multiple messages from friends and family who all said a version of this was such a great episode. It was great to learn more about you. I didn't know these things about you. Some of them said.
Still talking about it. Yeah,
it's. I think that a lot. I mean, for her, I think she's someone who probably knew that she had a certain amount of courage in her life, right? That being said, I think a lot of other people, I think it'd be very easy to say that maybe she doesn't bring up a lot of this stuff with everybody. So having her community hear this about her so everyone has a different sort of relationship or perspective to being on. But I think overall, I mean, I've gotten a lot of emails from the people who are our guests who have said wonderful things.
And look, this may be our last episode, may not be. Look, David, you got to take kudos. This wouldn't happen without you.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah,
you did your thing. This was your concept. You initiated it. You contacted me. You found Michelle. A big thank you to you. This couldn't happen without you. It all starts,
I'm deeply grateful to be able to do this with you, Stephan. You and I have known each other for so long. We haven't really been able to hang out quite like this with this, in a concentrated way in a long time. So that's been awesome. Having Michelle, as a new colleague and buddy has been wonderful. A reminder, this began as a pro bono project to try and meet the moment that we're all in, politically and socially, in a small way. The current political scene, regardless of which side you're on, is really scary. It's just really kind of terrifying. We don't know how things are going. Right now, the National Guard is in D.C., making it feel like a military takeover. Trump is, he's out there with rhetoric about sending the National Guard. I don't know how that works, to New York City, to Democratic cities. Good luck with that. It's like it's gonna be ugly if that actually happens. But even if that doesn't happen, he's just, it's just he's chumming the water. And we're all, speaking for myself, I find it easy to get afraid. I find it easy to want to be passive, to retreat into my private life. And so one of, hearing what people are doing, paradoxically, on this podcast, hearing what people are doing in their private lives somehow encourages me for what we may all be able to accomplish together in our public lives.
Well said. Yeah. And I'll say this, to circle back to kudos to you, David. You're creating the work. You're, and it's not sometimes about the result. It's sometimes about I need to create something for this particular reason. And I think that you did that. You had this idea, you wanted to see it through, and not everyone does that. And furthermore, I do feel, and this is what I learned from my podcast, that creating stuff is a muscle. When you create one thing, you learn how to get past all the things you need to do. You get past the courage that you need to create that one project. All of a sudden, I feel like you started producing films and you were like, what else can I produce? What else can I create? This podcast? Then who knows what your next creation is, but you're not as intimidated to create it because you've done it a few times.
Took a lot of courage.
Yeah, that's a really great point. So, wow, what do we think? Do you think we're going to do this again? I can't afford it, so I can't afford to pay for it. I'm one and done in that way.
That's up to Michelle.
Not Michelle.
That's on me.
But it's been such a cool thing getting to know both of you.
She said me.
Yeah, this is really wonderful. I'm looking forward to, we're going to get together, of course, soon to celebrate in person. Any of our guests who happen to be in New York City, oh my Lord, we'd love to see you, have you here.
Let us know. We'd love to see you.
Yeah. So, my rose and thorn for this is that my rose is getting this done, man. It's getting this done. And also not just getting this done, but doing it despite a few warts. This season wasn't perfect, but I almost like it better because it wasn't. So
I thought it was perfect.
There you go.
I mean, what's perfection? We had a good time. We got to meet people. They expressed their lives to us and what they're doing. We did the same.
And one of the things, and that reminds me, Stephan, one of the things we didn't, I hope we didn't do, I don't think we did. I really don't think we did this, but a lot of podcasters do this. We did not pretend to know everything or have all the answers, and we did not get snarky about stuff. We didn't, bring up a topic and get snide about it. Well, maybe occasionally.
I wanted to, but I won't mention which podcast.
He held it back. I know exactly which one you're thinking, Stephan.
I mean, some of the shit that was being shoveled. Come on. Really? Come on, Millstone. Millstone!
I'm here to be a uniter. And
we did see in the trailer that sparks were going to fly. So
we did do that. Yeah, we said that.
They didn't fly that much.
No, they didn't.
I think all of the guests, they have their perspective and point of view. So I'm fine with it.
I know.
But I mean, it is what it is, right? We're all moving forward.
We don't have to agree with everybody. No. And we don't need to hang out with everybody.
We all need to get into the habit more of being
listening.
Able not to agree with everybody on everything. We're going to all have our red lines. We need to have our red lines, but our red lines can't be like this.
But I think that's a good takeaway, though, is this idea that even if you don't agree with someone, we can give them the opportunity to listen to what they're saying. We don't have to agree with it at the end either, but we're listening.
But let me say this on an objective scale. Yeah, we can have disagreements, right? But if people have a different opinion than us, it should be well thought out, it should be factual, and it should be truthful. And if it doesn't have those and you're just shoveling shit, yeah, I got a problem with that because you the positions many people take are filled with factoids, lies, mistruth, and misinformation. So it's hard for me. Look, David, you and I have disagreed many times on stuff, but it's well thought out. There's a logic behind it. And I can go, yeah, that makes sense because X, Y, Z, and D. And it's factually based. But when people come with a different opinion and it's based on conspiracy theories and misinformation and just gibberish, it's hard for me to say, well, we disagree. You're just an idiot.
One of the early books of
That's my opinion.
Of Aristotle's Physics, I think it's probably in book 1, it makes sense logically at least, is he actually says at one point, we can't have a discussion until we agree on the definitions of is and is not. We have to agree that we have to be able to agree on that one simple point, that some things are and some things are not. So we can then begin to adjudicate between the two. If we can't say there's such a thing as real things, real facts, and things that are not real facts, we can't even begin to have a conversation.
I'm going to give you two examples, because you're right on the money. Guy comes up to me and says, hardly anybody died of COVID.
Ugh.
True story.
Ugh.
And I said, factually, I believe, I don't know the numbers, but I don't know if millions, but certainly several 100,000s of people have died because of COVID. That's a fact worldwide. The World Health Organization, supposedly, right, who's put out statistics on this, there's got to be some body that is objective that said these are the numbers, have stated that hundreds of thousands of people have died from COVID.
Well, don't you understand that the WHO is a Zionist plot, where we Jews are trying to take over the world through? That's what a sizable number of people think, that kind of thing right now.
You're getting my point.
I know. I was like,
You're getting my point.
I sure do.
Okay, now, so if somebody said to me, well, look, hundreds of thousands of people have died from COVID, but I believe X, Y, and Z, it's a different argument. That's all I'm saying. Okay, so when you have those kind of crazy conspiracy theories that you're talking about, it's hard to just say, let's agree, disagree, but you just stay silent. And there are many people who take that position.
Yeah, well, we're in a land of where there's no definition of is and or is not. There's no agreement on what is and is not.
I went to that fancy college of mine, right? Give you one more example. And I think what we were having, I was on a debate, and the guy was white, and I'm black, we're having a debate. Guy says to me, I'm from the South, and he said, all of the major civil rights speeches that really made a difference, right, took place in the South. And I said, is Washington, D.C. in the South, according to you? He said no. No, he said no. Oh. It's not below, but I don't know what the Mason-Dixon line is.
Yeah.
Maybe it's
no, it's a little bit south of that, but yeah.
Yeah, but I'm saying is, what about the speeches that took place in Harlem or Poughkeepsie with Martin Luther King up here? Now, if I didn't know that, right, that's a factual basis, okay? And he said it with such conviction. And he fought me on it. And then there wasn't any Google back then. We had to go look it up and had to prove to him that he was wrong. I mean, so look, people out there, our audience, and look, just try to find the truth in whatever you're arguing about.
So there's something called confidence bias. Have you guys heard of this? Mm-hmm. It's the bias that comes from when people speak with such confidence and conviction what they're saying that everyone around them questions what they already know to be true.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that happens a lot where if you come out and the more confident you are and you say something and everyone else goes, I don't feel like that's true, but they're really confident. So there might be something they know that I don't know. That's called a confidence bias.
How about confident incompetence? Just joking.
All right. Guys, well, thank you two so much. It's been really a wonderful experience. I hope we get to do it again.
Me too. It's been such a pleasure to get to know both of you and to get to hear and experience how you guys talk with people, and it's been amazing.
I don't know. It's been all right. I need to get a drag and a drink.
We'll see each other soon.
My man Millstone.
Stephan.
Oh, I like the reverb. That's good. Good stuff.